Hey YouTube, Brandon Ascari here with another awesome and insightful episode of Ascari Digital's Content Creator Academy, where, as you know, it is my goal to help educate and inspire you to being the best and most successful freelancer that I know you can be. Today we're going to be taking a look, as we always do on Mondays, with the latest and greatest in film news. So let's see what's going on in the world, why don't we? Camera Rumors 2020, the biggest and best camera rumors around. What are they? I wonder. We've already had a couple heavy hitters with the Sony A7S III, which we reviewed last week, and before that, the Blackmagic Ursa 12K. We know Canon's got the R5 coming out, so there's so much going on in the world right now. I can only imagine what they have in store for us as things continue. The global pandemic hasn't slowed down a wave of new camera launches, and the latest rumors suggest that 2020 will continue to be an incredibly exciting one for photography fans. What about us media content creators? What about the people who shoot video? Been dominated by blockbuster launches like the Canon EOS R5, called it, and Sony A7S III, also called it. It seems like the likes of Nikon and Sony will now switch their focus to the more affordable end of the market, which will come as a big relief to hobbyists who can't justify spending thousands on a new camera body, as tempting as it is. Well, this is a good approach, I do think, because the main flagship lines are the ones that have been announced so far, like the R5 and A7S III. That is their more expensive model. This allows them to focus on the crop sensor cameras, so maybe your Super 35/APS-C and your Micro Four Thirds. So maybe we'll get to see an update to like the A6400, A6500, A6600 from Sony, maybe something in the Canon TI series or something in their mirrorless line like the M50. So I'm curious to see what the follow-ups to those will be, so let's keep on reading and see if maybe we'll get some answers to those questions. Several new mirrorless models are expected to arrive later this year, including travel-friendly APS-C cameras, called it, didn't I? And entry-level full-framers for those who are looking to step up from their DSLR. The DSLR is far from dead either, as new models such as the Nikon D780 and Canon 1DX Mark III show one of the biggest trends is a move towards hybrid cameras that bring mirrorless tricks to the more traditional DSLR setup, and we'll likely see more of the same later in 2020. If you're me, and you aren't, I'm me, you're you. I'm glad that we could have this mutual understanding. I personally prefer DSLRs to mirrorless. I've always found that DSLRs have a nicer, more cinematic look to it. I like their color science better. I don't know why. I don't know where I get this from. Maybe because I grew up on DSLRs. I always just found that I like the look out of a DSLR more than a mirrorless. I always feel like the mirrorless is too sharp and too perfect and too crisp, and I don't like that. So for me, the DSLR gives it a softer, more cinematic feel to it. But it's not to say that I don't like mirrorless. I'm shooting on one right now, so I'm the biggest hypocrite in the world. You just wouldn't know. But anyway, the point here is DSLRs are not going to die. There's no question about that, and I appreciate that they're taking a hybridized approach. You're going to probably get better low-light performance, stuff like that, like the mirrorlesses usually have, and then add that to the DSLRs, which already have a better image in my opinion, so this will create an interesting hybrid. I'm curious to read more about the 1DX Mark III. Hopefully that's in here. What are the latest camera rumors we've heard this year? And how has the pandemic affected schedules? I'm sure very much. Using our knowledge of traditional refresh rates for certain model lines, as well as the latest leaks gleaned from industry insiders and internet sources, we've created this roundup of the latest camera rumors for each manufacturer. We'll keep it regularly updated as news comes in, so make sure to check back for analysis on the most exciting photographic tools we can expect to see in the latter end of 2020. So let's see what Canon has, as that's the first option. Canon M50, called it. Canon, right there, EOS M7. That's probably a follow-up to the M50. I probably jumped the gun on that, but it is the M line, so The latest rumors suggest that Canon will release a flagship EOS M camera to sit above the EOS M6 Mark II. Okay, maybe I was wrong. And bring features like a viewfinder and IBIS. So we're going to get in-body image stabilization in their Canon M line. That sounds great. After the huge double launch of the full-frame Canon EOS R5 and EOS R6, it seems that Canon will now be turning its attention to the EOS M range, which instead have APS-C sensors. Good, that's what we figured they were going to do. Canon has already replaced its viewfinderless EOS M6 with the Canon EOS M6 Mark II, and according to the Canon rumors, it'll follow that up with 2 new models later this year, a Canon EOS M50 Mark II. I did call it. The latter sounds like it'll effectively be the successor to the Canon EOS M5, with rumors specs including a 32 megapixel APS-C sensor, the same as the one in the EOS M6 Mark II, in-body image stabilization, dual card slots, and all the bells and whistles. Okay. One thing we really want to see is some new native glass to make the APS-C mirrorless system as a whole more appealing. This is one area where Canon is still lagging behind the likes of Fujifilm, Panasonic, Olympus, and Sony, but a Canon EOS M7 still sounds very appealing in theory. I have to agree with this completely. The M line does not have a lot of native glass, and it's not so easy to work with. It's not my favorite so far, so if they could release some new lenses, I think that would solve a lot of problems, and we'd be much happier with it, so I will look forward to that. Canon EOS M50 Mark II. The EOS M50 is one of Canon's most popular cameras, but it will soon get a much-needed refresh. 32.5 APS-C sensor, uncropped 4K video to 30p, dual pixel CMOS autofocus, which they all have, 14 FPS burst speed, and Digic X image processor. Very interesting, so that's always good to see that something is going on there. So, with that compact snapper now well established on shelves, the rumor mill has begun speculating on a refresh for the M50. While we're not expecting it until the end of 2020, it's already been rumored to be a camera to bridge the gap between the current model and the M6 Mark II. Canon Rumors reckons that the M50 Mark II will inherit the same sensor and image processor from the new M6 Mark II, while retaining the same EVF and vari-angle LCD display of the current M50. It should also be able to handle video better than the current model if there's any truth to the upgraded specs. Where the M50 can shoot 4K with a 1.6 times crop at 24 or 25p, there's speculation that the Mark II might be able to capture uncropped 4K footage at a more respectable 30 FPS, while full HD still shoots at 120 FPS. So you see, that is a huge downside actually when it comes to this, because you really don't want to have an additional crop just to shoot 4K, especially when you're working with any camera in modern day. They all are shooting uncropped for the most part. 4K is coming in at 30, 60, 120 frames per second, and here we are still barely getting 25 to 30 frames per second, so that's a huge deficit for Canon, and I really wish that they would correct that. I'm not an engineer. I don't have a degree in this, but I would think it's probably not that difficult to be able to add features like shooting at higher frame rates. I can't imagine that being difficult. But anyway, let's take a look at, we're going to skip Nikon because they're really not video people. I'm biased. The Sony A7 IV. Okay. The Sony A7 III remains one of the finest full-frame mirrorless cameras around, but will it soon be getting a successor? Predicted specs: 24 megapixel sensor, 5.76 million dot EVF, we're talking the millions, 5-axis stabilization, real-time eye autofocus, and 6K video. Finalist. Why didn't you put that in the A7S III? You just announced that camera, and you're like, oh, it's going to have 4K, 10-bit. Okay. I've got 6 and 8K 10-bit and other cameras, and one of them got 12K now. And you're still here in the land of 4K? Catch up. So now that everybody else did it, now on the next one you decided, well, I guess we're going to have to cram those specs in there, aren't we? Disappointing. The Sony A7 IV, successor to the excellent A7 III mirrorless all-rounder, was expected to be announced at the CP Plus show in early 2020, but it didn't arrive and rumors have since died down. There have been no big, reliable leaks yet, but the latest speculation suggests the A7 IV will have the same design, EVF, and autofocus system as the A7R IV. Considering the viewfinder is one of the main aspects of the A7 III that we'd like to see upgraded, this is potentially very good news. Some slightly more wild speculation, from Thailand, strangely, is that the A7 IV will have fully articulating touchscreens, but that seems more likely now that we've finally seen that feature in the A7S III, as we talked about last week. Aside from these specs, little is known about the A7 IV. We'll update this page as soon as we hear any more news. I'm kind of disappointed. I think they're playing late to catch up to the game. They saw the competition rip them a new one in the last month, so now they want to do that. But the funny thing is, the Sony sensors are actually like 5.7K or 6K sensors that down-res to 4K. You don't have the option to shoot in 6K, but the sensor's capable, and the sensor takes that image in. So the thing that confuses me the most with this is actually that Sony doesn't just put out a firmware upgrade to just smash the competitions and say, oh, all the cameras that you have with a 6K sensor that downscale to 4K can shoot 6K now. Firmware update, that's all you need. I'm sure somebody could figure that out. Not me, I'm not that smart. Somebody, figure it out, please. Sony A7000. Whoa, it's almost over 9,000. With the A6600 now with us, what might a more senior A7000 bring to the mirrorless party? Obviously, age and wisdom. Predicted specs: 24 megapixel, APS-C censored, improved autofocus, design similar to the Alpha A9. The Sony A6000 was a phenomenally successful model for Sony, and the A6000 line has been padded out since then with the more senior A6300, A6400, and A6500 models. More recently, we witnessed the A6100 and A6600 arrive to add lower tier and upper tier options to these, but some still suspect a model that sits between the A6600 and the full-frame A7 series is being readied. This could be a baby Alpha A9, borrowing many features of the flagship camera that would then be distilled into a camera based around an APS-C sensor. This is something that Nikon has done with the D5 and D500 DSLR models. Rumors suggest that it matches and in some aspects exceeds the performance of the Fujifilm X-T3, which has since been succeeded by the X-T4 with better autofocus and in-body image stabilization, while it will match the 20 FPS burst shooting speed of the Sony Alpha A9. As for the sensor, Sony's just updated the database of sensors it manufactures, which includes a back-illuminated 26 megapixel APS-C sensor, which would be a good fit for the new camera. There's also talk of the Alpha A7000 using a 32 megapixel APS-C sensor as well. Sony has made great changes to its autofocusing systems in recent generations of camera too, and while the 425-point phase detection autofocus system inside the A6000 is still a cracking performer, the eventual update will likely bring speed improvements and additional autofocus points to form a denser array with better tracking capabilities. Design-wise, it's likely the new camera will feature a similar DSLR-inspired look to Sony's full-frame cameras with a raised and centralized electronic viewfinder. This seems cool. It sounds like they're actually putting a lot of time and effort to upgrading the A6 and 7000 line, which is awesome. I really do enjoy my Sony A6400. I think it's a great camera for the price point, so I'd be very happy to see how they're going to add two cameras in this price bracket that are significantly less expensive. Fujifilm. Now, I've never owned a Fuji. I'd like to. The X-T3 looked awesome. The X-T4 is probably even better, so I would like to look at a Fujifilm one day. So the Fujifilm X-H2, with Fujifilm insisting that the X-T4 doesn't mean the end of the line for its X-H range, what video powers could we expect from a Fujifilm X-H2? Predicted specs: 26.1 megapixel back-illuminated X-Trans CMOS sensor, 5.76 million .EVF, in-body image stabilization, and 6K video at 60p. Sony, you're not even at 6K, and even a fucking Fuji is ahead of you. So stupid. Fujifilm has recently been busy, with the company following up its launches of the Fujifilm X100V and Fujifilm X-T200 with the recent arrival of the Fujifilm X-T4. In fact, it's even refreshed its popular Instax Mini instant camera range. But while many expected the launch of the X-T4 to mean the end of the video-focused X-H line, Fujifilm has said that this isn't the case, and the latest rumors back this up. Very intrigued. The X-H2, a follow-up to the video-centric X-H1, will apparently be announced, although possibly not this year. According to Fuji Rumors, Fujifilm will hold off till 2021 to launch a second edition of the X-H series, the first Fujifilm camera to feature in-body image stabilization. Thank you. Nothing is known about the possible specs of the rumored X-H2, but Fuji Addict reckons it might use a 43 megapixel Sony-made sensor, although that appears unlikely. Video-centric cameras don't need high-resolution sensors to produce top-notch results, but Fuji Addict is quite sure that the X-H2 will come with a new sensor and processor. That would be a horrible idea to put 43 megapixels in there. I mean, we know that from previous episodes, we're very well aware that the more megapixels to the sensor size, the worse that it performs in low light for video. So, 43 megapixels, not going to be good. Panasonic GH6 and GH6S. Here we go. Predicted 41 megapixel micro four thirds sensor. That is stupid. Why would you put 41 megapixels in the smallest of the camera sensors? That means you gotta have like 1K lights around in the room just to see an image. And then you're gonna have to crank up the ISO anyway. That's just terrible. 6K video recording, like everybody else now. In-body image stabilization, good, it's always good to see that. Panasonic has been fully focused on the full-frame mirrorless market recently, as they should be, with no additions to its staple of Micro Four Thirds models since the Lumix G9 in late 2017 and the Lumix GH5S in early 2018, which is a great camera. But that looks likely to change soon with the arrival of the GH6. The Japanese manufacturer was expected to launch the new model at Photokina in May, but the event was cancelled due to the global pandemic. Rumors now suggest that the GH6 will instead be revealed in August or September 2020, with shipping set to begin early 2021. And if certain rumors are to be believed, we'll see not one, but at least two new models, the GH6 and probably the GH6S. Both are believed to be a Sony MFT sensor with a 41 megapixel resolution, which is unusually high for a Micro Four Thirds camera. See? Specs shared by a Spanish Facebook group for Panasonic and Olympus users indicate that the new models will also offer improved battery life, a new, faster autofocus system, and better in-body image stabilization. Good, because Panasonic's in-body image stabilization is not that good. It is not a top contender like Canon or Sony. I don't know how Fuji's is doing, but it's better than Panasonic's probably. So it is good to see that. Improved battery life is always a big plus, but still otherwise you're putting too many megapixels in here. So I'm hoping the more video-centered S model for the Panasonic GH line will have less megapixels, while maybe they'll keep it photocentric for the regular GH6, but we'll see. So what will separate the two models? One suggestion is that one will capture video at up to 4K resolution, while the other will be capable of 6K, though which is remain to be seen. Obviously the GH6S would be able to do 6K. Some rumors have also pointed to a third model with 8K capabilities, but this, along with many of the specs above, is pure conjecture. We won't know anything for certain until Panasonic issues an official announcement, and we'll update this page as soon as it does. So closing thoughts on this, I think it's great what some of these camera companies are doing. I think some of them, I'm not going to name names, are falling behind a little bit and trying to play catch up with newer models when they should update ones that are already out. Firmware's a wonderful thing. Blackmagic does it all the time. You should take after them because they're freaking awesome. Not sponsored by them. Wish I was. Holla at your boy if you'd like to. So anyway, let me know what you think about some of these rumors. If there's any cameras that you'd like to hear more in-depth thoughts of, please leave a comment down below. Otherwise, if you haven't, don't forget, give us a big thumbs up, share the video with all your friends and family around the world so you and all of them can be the first one to see these videos when they air Mondays and Wednesdays. And otherwise, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and in the meantime, I will see ya!